What's going on, y'all? How's everyone doing? Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, no matter where you're from. Excited for today. What's up, Brian? Hey, it's Brian. It's Brian. What's going on? CD, how you doing? It's good to see. Good to see y'all. Good to see y'all. Derek, howdy to you as well. Howdy. I should start using that more. Um, what's up, Fred? Hey, Fred. Familiar names. Love to see it. Love to see it. All right, we'll get get this thing going here. If I look or sound a little weird, I literally just got the second half of a root canal done about 2 hours ago, so feeling fantastic. So we'll get this thing going. PPP Pro Prime Prompt Polish, the Pro Edition. So first, thank you all for first of all, doing the normal PPP, telling people about it, leaving a testimonial, all that good stuff. This is also the second time I've done the updated version of PPP. So, of PPP Pro. So obviously, about a month and a half ago, ChatGPT got rid of plugins, and a big part of Pro was plugins. So we've updated that with some other things as well as a little bit of GPTs. So. Uh, you guys already know, like you guys are experts here, but you all know we have the daily live stream 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Hey, and it's Peter. So some people like Peter and Brian and some other great super smart AI leaders are there in the live stream podcast. If you ever listen on the podcast, appreciate that as well. I'm going to go ahead and drop links in here in case you didn't know, or maybe you're normally a live stream person and you miss it. That's fine. So appreciate any reviews on the podcast as well. That would be great. Just drop those links. And then the newsletter. Something people don't know is if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you can go back and read every single newsletter that we've ever written. So that's just on the homepage. Thanks, Fred. I'm glad you love the live stream. All right. So here's what we're going to be going over today. But first, here's what Adrian said. He said, I'm floored. He said he took the PPP class and he said, I feel like I'm using AI for the first time. Absolutely brilliant class. All right. Little housekeeping. You guys probably know, you already found the chat QA. So at the very end, I'm going to go and answer any and all questions that are in there. So as I'm going along, it's a smaller group, right? I think last week we had 160 people on one PPP course. The PPP Pro is very small, and we weren't, promoting this one heavily. So I should be able to get all questions as they come in. But if I forget, just go to that little QA. And then last but not least, just go find the emoji and go ahead and slap one on 3. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. All right, there we go. So if something's helpful, just hit emojis a bunch. That means I'll spend a little bit more time talking about it, explaining it, etc. If I don't see any emojis or anything in the chat, I'm going to go quick because I assume that it's going to be review for you guys, or it's just not useful. All right. So the big part of the normal PPP Prime Prompt Polish was to change the way that you interact with ChatGPT. The point of PPP Pro is to change the way you do business with ChatGPT. So we're going to be talking about a lot more kind of business use cases and some different tools and techniques that will really help you better refine your usage of ChatGPT. Here's how we're going to get to there. All right, we're going to go over the basics, expert chat refresher, refine queue intro, which might be new to a lot of you, or maybe a refresher, PPP refresher. Then we're going to go into post PPP tweaks, GPT quick dive, how to train ChatGPT on your data, Chrome extensions, sharing trained chats, and advanced data analysis basics. Are y'all ready? Ready to get going, y'all? Ready to get going? Yeah, we're good. Hey, what's up, Jeff? Jeff, I'm glad you can make it. Sorry about the last time mix up on the Pro. Wendy, good to see you. Good to see you. Love to see some familiar names in here. All right, here we go. You guys probably know a little bit about me, but I was a journalist for a long time. I was a nonprofit leader for almost 10 years. We just ended up doing a bunch of marketing and activation for Nike and Jordan brand. And most of you guys know me from Everyday AI. So I talk about this, but our team had been using the GPT technology since late 2020. It's kind of like when ChatGPT came out, and I'm like, oh, people are talking about prompt engineering all wrong. And that kind of led me to start Everyday AI, actually. All right. So starting with the basics. We always start with the basics because there's new stuff, right? There's new stuff all the time. So a couple new things, but the difference between free and pro, we always start here. So actually, Monday, I think Monday, there was originally supposed to be some new ChatGPT announcements, launching a search engine. Let me actually make sure that they didn't do this in the last, like, you know 15 minutes since I checked. That happened once. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, here's something, y'all. Nothing new. But now it added a slash search, which wasn't there like an hour ago. So the plot thickens. Anyways, right now, the biggest difference between ChatGPT free version and the pro version is the free version does absolutely really nothing. And I would say don't use it. So when we talk about prime prompt polish, people say, does it work in the free version? Kind of, right? The biggest thing holding it back right now is the memory, right? So it's really hard to do proper prompt engineering with only 8K tokens. That's about 6,000 words, right? So the whole point when working within ChatGPT is to keep the context window, because that's one of the biggest weaknesses right now of ChatGPT and GPT-4 compared to Claude 3 Opus or Gemini 1.5. With the million token context, is the memory is very small, but it is so much more powerful and so much robust than all of the other models combined, and it's not even close. So you really have to keep memory in mind, and really take advantage of everything on the business. So I like calling ChatGPT right now a business operating software, right? Because that's what it is. Think of kind of how the original Windows, right? You can run your business inside there. That's what ChatGPT is right now. If you know how to use it correctly, if you're good at basic prompt engineering. All right, so updates. Not all these are new, but some of them. So we have the multimodal default, DALL-E integration, GPTs, obviously an updated version of GPT-4 Turbo about a month ago. The vision mode, so ChatGPT can see Teams, which I love. The GPT store, which kind of stinks. It's more of a directory. It's gotten a little better after some updates about 2 months ago. About 3 weeks ago, cross-chat memory came out. So I actually, if you want to know a little more about cross-chat memory, I did an entire episode. And I think, especially when we talk about, hey, like this is PPP Pro, I think you need to understand the pros and the cons, because this actually might be taking away from your ability to get good outputs out of ChatGPT, because it might be saving things and you might not always catch them. All right. So make sure to go watch or listen to that episode that I just dropped there. And then what we just talked about, the new chatgpt.com. So that is less than a week old, but essentially OpenAI is preparing now. The date, the alleged date is, I believe, Monday now, where presumably they will be kind of launching a search first version of ChatGPT. Not sure how that'll work. Not sure how it might change the best ways to prompt, but obviously if it does change completely, if they launch a new model, we'll be updating the PPP accordingly. Don't worry. All right. Oh, there goes. Sorry, my clicker is going a little wild there. Weird. Okay. Um, So multimodal in action. So people say, like, what does that mean? Well, you can input text, you can input photos, you can input spreadsheets, PDF, etc., and output all of those formats as well, or code, JSON, etc. So again, that's what I think people originally think of ChatGPT and still think of it a lot as, oh, it's a content writer or a brainstorming partner. And it's like, yes, it is. However, I think, well, I should always put out there, never upload confidential, sensitive, proprietary information, etc. But really think, how can you start integrating your business operations and business processes within ChatGPT? All right. Some new things inside DALL-E, right? So I'll say this, DALL-E's not good. It's not. It's so far behind Stable Diffusion XL and Midjourney that it's not even funny. However, I still encourage people to be using DALL-E. Here's why. We know that OpenAI's Sora model has the ability to output images, right? So I still think you need to be able to know how and refine how you work with images inside of ChatGPT, because presumably, whether Dolly gets to use that technology or Dolly is gone and we're generating images with Sora, not sure, but you should still be using it and understanding how ChatGPT works. Because hey, talk about prompting. When you put in a simple prompt, right? This is just an example. I would never ask for an image this way, but I said, create a photo of a Chicago skyline in the summer, realistic, boats in water, plane in the sky, air and water show vibes, right? Something people don't know about DALL-E or OpenAI is it changes your prompt, right? Every single time. You can put in a very extreme long prompt, it'll still change it completely. So people don't understand that. So that's just something to know about DALL-E and how it works. Presumably also, right? You want to sharpen up your prompting skills for whatever is living inside of OpenAI. So keep that in mind. Another thing inside DALL-E that a lot of people don't know is you have in painting, generative in painting. So it's not always consistent, which is weird. But in this example, right, you can highlight. So I highlighted those planes. I said, make the planes yellow and black. And on the second attempt, it got it right, right? Like the first attempt, it completely gave me a new photo. I redid it, and then it got the planes, yellowish, blackish, right? I'm curious, does anyone in here use DALL-E? I don't really, except to practice and stay up to date. CD said, yeah, it's not good enough. It's not good enough for a lot of things. With some proper prompting, you can get some things that look a little more realistic, but the default of DALL-E still is this very, almost like painting, computer generated graphics look and feel to it versus the realism that you get out of the box with Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. All right, some new updates with GPT-4 Turbo. Well, you have the new knowledge cutoff, which is December 2023, which is a great improvement. It has longer input abilities as well as better instruction following. Teams. I'm curious. Does anyone in here use Teams, or does everyone just kind of use ChatGPT Plus? I'm curious. We use Teams. The thing I like about Teams, well, there's better data handling, there's better sharing controls, as well as limits, right? The best thing is you get double the limits. So instead of that 40 chat limit over a 3-hour period, you actually get 80 per Teams account, which is great. Big fan of that. So, and then, like I said, some of the advanced data controls that you don't get with ChatGPT Plus. Cross chat memory. We talked about this a little bit. I already dropped the link in there. It's brand new. Mostly everyone in ChatGPT Plus, you should have it. It's very easy. You can go in and toggle it on or off in settings. I'm not going to spend time talking about it because I did like a whole 25-minute episode going over the pros and the cons. All right, so let's just do a quick refresher on expert chats. So again, and this is very important to set the stage for prompting. And this is just prompting in general. Large language models are not the future, right? I'm actually going to have a whole episode on this soon because I don't think people understand that the trend is small models, right? Look at what's come out recently with Microsoft's Phi 3. Look what's come out with Meta's Llama, right? So all of these models are becoming more and more capable because humans are getting better at tuning them, as well as compute is coming down, right? So previously, the thought or kind of where the technology was is you just had to have these extremely large models, and they're not always the best, right? Smaller models are much more capable, but still, it's still the concept. Creating an expert chat is essentially taking this large model that is essentially good at every single task in the world and making it great at one very specific thing. So we are literally refining it. And we're almost trying to make a model smaller and to train a chat on one very specific thing. So that is the premise of Prime Prompt Polish and what we're actually doing with our kind of prompt engineering 101. So I tell people it's like if you're training a new employee, you don't just throw down a manual and say, go to work. You have to have a conversation. First, you would probably send out an email or a one-pager, say, here's what to expect. You get there. What questions do you have? You go back and forth. You train a little bit. You test on knowledge retention, right? It's the exact same process, right? I had a conversation with, someone from OpenAI. They came on the podcast and talked about it. His analogy, which I liked, he said, it's like you're a teacher and there's a bunch of third graders, right? They're either going to, fail or they're going to succeed based on how you work with them, right? But if you just, click new chat and you just, say, hey, this is my Tuesday chat, and you put everything in there, your results are going to be terrible. So you really have to train your student or train an expert. That is what prompt engineering is. All right. So here we'll do actually, let me ask you guys, should we go slow, medium, or fast on an overview of prime prompt polish? It's up to you guys. You have me for the next hour. So let me know, do you want a slow or a fast? All right, everyone wants fast. Cool, we'll go fast. There is something new. And actually also let me know, when did you guys take PPP last? Did you take it like 2 weeks ago or like 3 months ago? Because we did implement something new. So I'll go super fast, but if no one has refined Q, then I'll go a little slower on refined Q. We'll go fast on everything else. All right. But in short, so when you prime, you go through background, Q&A, memory recall, and you do not ask for an output. So again, when we're priming, we're not asking for an output. We are actually making the model smaller. When we prompt, that's when we essentially recall all the determinations. We go over role task format, and that's the first time we actually ask for an output. Polish, this is where we actually get into the concept of shots, right? This is where we get into, when you think of like zero shot, one shot, few shot, etc. This is where we are actually giving input and output pairings, and we are actually training the model, right, on the output before we are actually just refining it and making it smaller. All right, here's a little hot PPP Pro tip. Minimum three back and forths, very minimum, right? So 3 back and forth primes, 3 back and forth prompt, 3 back and forth polish at the absolute minimum. We really need to get, I talk about this on the podcast all the time, if you do listen, but people, if you think, copy and paste prompt or zero shot prompting is going to get you something usable, it's not. Every single scientific paper, research study, the more back and forth conversations, the more examples, exponentially better output, right? That is the whole premise of prime prompt polish. All right, so priming. Again, we're not just going over the role of the task, the background, and asking questions, all right? Because I'm going to show you guys refined Q here in a second, but I have this screenshot up here to remind you that it's many times back and forth. We are making the model smaller when we are priming. All right, another thing about priming is doing memory recalls. So generally, even when I prime, I go through anywhere from 10,000 to 16,000 tokens, right? So already I'm at about half of ChatGPT's context window, which is not a good thing. So you always need to be doing a memory recall. Another thing to remind you all is like, think, whether you want to think of it as like, top P or temperature and randomness, but large language models are generative, but they don't just output information in a generative fashion. They technically remember in a generative fashion as well, which I don't think a lot of people understand, which is why a memory recall is so very important. Think of it like this. If you have 100 new employees, right, and you're training them, right? So this concept of expert chats, and you just talk straight for an hour, and then you quiz all of these 100 employees, they're all going to retain different information. Okay. So if you have the same priming with ChatGPT 100 different times, it is going to remember things differently as well. It might remember things 2 ways. It might remember things 50 ways. It might remember things 90 ways. Okay. Which is why it's very important to do a memory recall, because we are testing to see out of all of this information, which pieces and parts did the engine GPT-4 properly tokenize and retain the information, because it's all generative. People think like, oh, if I just put all of this information into ChatGPT up to 32,000 tokens, it's going to recall it exactly. No, it's not. It's not how large language models work. All right. Does that make sense, y'all? Can I get one of those little emoji things, if that makes sense? There we go. All right, cool. Makes sense. Fantastic. All right, so this piece is new. So we've had about 4,000 people take our prime prompt polish, and one of the questions that we get most often, or why people take it a second time, is they say, hey, the priming part, I'm still not good at it, right? or it takes me way too long. Like, how can I do the priming better? So that's what we came up with, Refined Q. We essentially reverse engineered how we primed. We look across all our chats and we said, okay, this is how we do it consistently. So role, yes, you still need to assign a role. You guys took the regular PPP. You don't just say you're an expert in this. That doesn't do anything. You need to be very specific. Examples, you need to give examples of role input and outputs. All right, fetch. You need to tell the GPT to find, and I said the GPT, all right, more information past the knowledge cutoff. You need to ask for specific information when you are giving it specific web pages. Okay. Then we need to narrate. We need to narrate the pain points and tell the story of our audience and their pain points. We need to explain the expectations, what the large language model should do with all this information. And then that's where we ask for questions, right? So we are literally turning ChatGPT into a consultant. Here's what that looks like. So I literally recommend that you make paragraphs just like this. So, your paragraph for the role, and it needs to be specific. Examples. We need to give examples of what the role means, what it doesn't. All right. If content writing, here's what a good content writer is. Here's what it's not. Fetch. So I think I zoom in here, but if you look at the very bottom, you'll see I'm not just talking to ChatGPT. I'm using the web reader GPT, an internet connected GPT, because browse with Bing, you can't share certain information with it via a web page because it may or may not work. All it does is query the words in the URL, which may or may not bring you to the correct web page. Also, you could say, search these 5 things. You don't know if it searches those 5 things unless you use a GPT. All right, so we are fetching with the GPT. All right, so role, example, fetch, insights, narrate, explain, question. All right. Wait, does this make sense? Do we have any questions on Refined Q? Let's see. I might have missed. Let's see. Jeff, how does memory recall apply to custom GPTs? There is no great answer on that right now, Jeff, because I've even personally done A/B testing on, and it also depends on how your GPTs are set up, which we're going to talk about earlier, because some people just pack everything into custom instructions and make it very long. Some people obviously put, files inside of their knowledge base. And sometimes the ChatGPT will indiscriminately check the knowledge, even if in your configuration instructions, even if you tell it to check the knowledge each and every time. So we've done testing on context windows, and it is haphazardly different every single time. So I wish I could tell you there's no real documentation on kind of what that quote unquote like RAG, it's technically like a baby RAG, mini RAG process. There isn't great documentation and there's not consistency in it. So I can't give you a good answer on that. I've tried to get a good answer. It doesn't. Wendy, this process applies to any LLM to prompt correctly. In general, prime prompt polish, yes. It will work better. All models behave a little differently, right? Because they're all trained to behave a little differently. But in general, yes, the more conversation or back and forth you have with the model, the better the output. Sometimes, like if you're using, as an example, the free version of Copilot, it will randomly, and it's not consistent. I've checked like the number of words. It will just randomly say, oh, this chat's over. We're going to start a new chat. So it doesn't do that in the paid version, but keep that in mind for the free version of Copilot. Brian, so with Fetch, you need to use Web Reader. Yes, or an internet connected GPT. If it doesn't require a specific web page, you can use Browse with Bing, right? In this example, the writing landing page copy with Everyday AI, I gave it 3 URLs on the Everyday AI website to specifically go to. If you're just doing more of, research across a certain sector or something like that, you can't just use Browse with Bing. And then in that fetch paragraph, you need to specifically say, using Browse with Bing, please find 5 articles and examples from web pages in 2024 or earlier, right? Or sooner, or from the year 2024, right? So yes, in that fetch, depending on if you need certain web pages, I would be using Web Reader. If you don't, you can just use the default version of ChatGPT. Jeff, what do you think about the use of delimitators, markdown, or handlebars as part of the prompt? Are they useful? It's a great question. I'll say they're more useful now than I feel they will be in the near future, right? So Sam Altman has talked about this a lot on, essentially he said, hey, like, the GPT that we're using right now is, going to be embarrassingly bad, right? Like when we look back at it. I think that future versions of all models, and we've already seen this, get better with language handling. So even as an example, if you used to, use like markup or YAML. So, yet another marketing language. I think that's what that stands for, or markup, yet another markup language. Like, even if you look at the results, like YAML used to give you great like input output on 3.5 versus now it's not that much better. So is it still helpful? Delimiters, I need more time to talk about that because I got to get into like tokenization. But with Markdown, those kind of things, I think it is still somewhat helpful now, but I don't think it's going to be as helpful now as it is in the future. I think it's going to be less helpful in the future. Sorry, y'all. This job pain's getting in my brain. Yes, Web Pilot. Yeah, Fox Script, Web Pilot. There's plenty of GPTs. All right, so we're good with Refine Q. I know you guys wanted the fast version, but sorry, I was answering all the questions there. Are we good to move on? All right, let's go. All right, so that was priming. Prompting is very easy. If you do priming right, prompting is easy. We just reminded the role, reminded the audience, reminded the pain points, reminded the angle and tones, reminded the copy requirements. And obviously, this is the very first time we are actually asking for an output. So again, here's what I'm going to bring Big Head Jordan on. So, this example, right, it's just landing page copy. But think of it like this, because we're talking PPP Pro, we're talking business. So think if you were training an expert chat on helping you research and analyze in a specific way, right? So let's say you're in the transportation industry and each week there's a huge, 50-page, industry PDF that goes out and you don't care about anything except rail as an example, right? You would go in and you would teach using Prime Prompt Polish, the expert chat methodology, and using Refine Q, but you would go through and teach, right? You would teach this chat how to comb through those long PDFs. You would give it examples. Here's what the output is. Here's the only thing we care about. You would prime it. You would prompt it. So in the priming phase, you wouldn't even upload a PDF, if that makes sense. So you're not actually giving it its first task, no matter what you're training it for, right? Whether you're training it for content writing, research, analysis, automation, whatever it is, you're never asking for an output until you get to the prompt phase. That's extremely important to keep in mind. All right. And then after you finally ask for your first output, it's obviously going to stink, right? It's literally going to be really bad still, even if you do it right. So do not get discouraged. If you go through this priming in this refine queue, and then you finally prompt and you're like, what the heck? Why does it stink? Well, that's just how large language models are. You make your biggest improvements between prompting and polishing. Okay. Polishing is extremely important. I even tell people, even here, minimum 3 back and forth. Again, you have to keep memory in mind. You have to keep an eye on your token usage. Okay. But when you navigate, I like to say that's hands off. You're giving examples of what's good and what's bad. So again, think of it as pairings, right? So this is where the shots, quote unquote, really come in. We are giving the model examples, but when we navigate, it's always better to go through. You start wide and then you go narrow. So you say, hey, this is pretty good. Here's why this part's pretty good. Let's try it. Let's run another output, right? So you do that generally 3 times back and forth. Steer, that's hands on the wheel. That's where you're giving very specific examples. And you're saying this sentence right here is good for this reason. This sentence right here is bad. It should instead say this, right? So you're giving literally very specific examples, input, output pairings. All right. And then last but not least, you finish and you don't stop when you are happy with the output. You stop only when you feel the skill set has been properly trained. All right. So there is the quick version, the quick update on Prime Prompt Polish and Refine Q. So any questions before we kind of turn the page and go into some of our post PPP tips and tricks and get into more of the pro stuff here, right? Jeff, When you say a minimum of 3 back and forth, do you mean 3 runs through PPP or do you mean good question. So 3 back and forth. So priming, so the whole part of priming is at the end you say what questions do you have, right? And generally ChatGPT will come with a lot of questions and you answer those. But at the end of the answers, you say what other questions do you have now? So minimum 3 times back and forth. When you prompt, you're asking for the first output. It's not going to be good, right? So then you say, "Hey, like, let's do another output." And I know that part starts to bleed into the first part of polish. But then in polish, the 3 steps, minimum back and forth. So you're giving that general guidance back and forth 3 times. Then you're giving very specific examples of input output, what's good, what's bad 3 times. And then kind of the last phase as well. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Got it. Cool. All right. Let's get into post PPP tips and tricks. All right. I don't say this a lot, but I really actually like Microsoft Edge. All right. So when you want to go pro, here's a good way to do it. I love this. So um, if you don't know, Microsoft Edge is pretty good, actually. So it's based or it's built on Chromium. So if you're like me and you love Google Chrome and you can't get away from it, all of your Chrome extensions, your browser, your history, everything goes over to Edge. So I'm actually using Edge more and more now whenever I can for this very reason, because it has a Copilot sidebar. So here's why this is great, because as an example, this screenshot is one screen. Okay. So essentially, I split the screen. So on the right side, I just have the Copilot ribbon. Okay. And if you have, even if you have the free version of Copilot, it works with GPT-4. Okay. Also, it's obviously, internet connected, browse with Bing. Um, and then you can also, on the left side of your screen, you can pop out a Copilot banner there as well. So essentially, just on one screen, even if you're on a laptop, you can have 3 different versions going at once. And you might say, why do this? Well, because one of the things you always need to keep in mind is your memory, right? I talked about one of the biggest downsides to ChatGPT is the fact that it has a small memory compared to Claude 3, compared to Gemini 1.5, right? So this is a way, as an example, if ChatGPT, let's just say you need an example of good copywriters, right? Because if when going through the priming phase, it's going to ask you something like, "Hey, give me examples of this." So in theory, you could use your normal chat to be like, "Hey, give me 10 examples of copywriters who are great at, you know, writing about transportation," as an example, right? Or you can pop out and use the any of these 2 sidebars. The great thing as well is when you highlight something, you can instantly bring that in and work with it on the sidebar there. So if you haven't used the Copilot kind of sidebar within Microsoft Edge, huge tip. CD, are you using the same GPT in all 3 windows? Is that even possible? So no. Um, so obviously on the left side, that is just ChatGPT within OpenAI, right? And then on the quote unquote, the other 2 windows on the right side are Microsoft Copilot. So technically, they do not connect to each other, except what people don't understand is when you do highlight something, that's why in this screenshot I have it highlighted. Then you can work with it on the right hand side as well. So it's not necessarily sharing that information unless you highlight it, but it's just a good way. But also, like, here's the other thing too, right? ChatGPT can only process one thing at a time, right? What if it's processing on the left and you know that, oh, I need to ask this, but it's maybe not, it's more of a research thing and it's not necessarily where I want to take my expert, right? So it's just a great way to kind of quickly multitask. Because the biggest thing I think about, getting the most out of ChatGPT for your business is being fast, is being efficient, right? And sometimes, you aren't inside ChatGPT because you're copying and pasting, and you might go to a certain website to look something up, or you're like, oh, where's that file, etc. So that's why I like, I always work on 2 on 2 screens. So usually my left screen is set up exactly how you have there, and on the right side, I might have Claude or just a normal browser open. All right, so I love that trick. All right, here is another one: temperature checks. All right. Have I talked about this before? Have any of you guys seen this? It's kind of new-ish, but I love doing this. So essentially say, let's take a temperature on this. So in this example, I'm saying creativity. And I say, give this level from 1 to 10 on creativity. And then I say a 1 is essentially super boring. A 10 is the most creative thing, humans could ever imagine. And then I say, rank this output on how creative it is, right? Giving it examples. And you'll see right now by default, people always say, oh, ChatGPT it writes so dull and robotic. Well, here's a very easy way to tweak that without really doing any real prompt engineering, if I'm being honest. Um, Take a temperature gauge, right? It's going to say, oh, this is a 2 out of 10. And then you can literally just reply back and say, oh, let's crank this up to a 6, right? Don't just say a 6, maybe also give it a little more information. And then you can say, crank it up to a 10. And you are literally going to get better outputs that way. So don't just think of it as like creativity, right? Say like you could say sincerity, you could say humor, right? Like whatever you're trying to improve in your output. A lot of times this is more applicable for content writing. But again, think of anything that in theory a large language model can measure, you can technically control, right? So if you ever go inside the OpenAI plain box, there's literally like a temperature gauge, right? So think you can apply that same methodology across anything, right? You just have to give it an example. You say, hey, we're gonna have a 1 to 10. Sorry, my phone's ringing, y'all. I didn't know I didn't have this on silent. Give me a second. I'm gonna put this one on silent. There we go. All right. All right. Sorry about that. We're back. We're back. All right. So literally anything that you can put a temperature, quote unquote, on, you can very easily tweak. Some people spend so much time, redoing the input back and forth over and over, and they're just trying to change one little thing. If you know what you're trying to change or what you're trying to improve, give ChatGPT a measurement. Say, this is what we're going to do. Here's a 1 to 10. First, say, how would you rate this on whatever scale that you're doing? And then tweak it, crank it up, crank it down, whatever you need. All right. Here's another one. Someone emailed me. They're like, hey, this is when Vision first came out. They said, hey, do you think ChatGPT could solve? This is some like knowledge test from like 1912, right? So uploaded this into ChatGPT Vision. It did a pretty good job of actually reading everything correctly. And then I tested it. I'm like, all right, how smart is ChatGPT? But the same thing. I said, how confident are you in your responses, right? One thing that people, that you always have to keep in mind is hallucinations. Are large language models lying to you? Sometimes large language models, especially if you don't do a good job making it smaller, right? A 1.8 trillion parameter model is not the future of how we're going to be working with large language models. I honestly think we're going to be working with many small models, right? And there's going to be some system that says, oh, this goes to the creative writing fine-tuned model, right? But working with these trillion parameters large language models, they're very flexible and robust, but sometimes they don't know what they're talking about, but they're still going to give you a response because they're trained to be helpful, right? And even if they're not 100% sure, they're still going to give you a response because they're trained to be helpful. So you can just say, hey, rank this on your confidence from a 1 to 10. A 1 is you have no confidence. A 10 is there's no way it can be disproven. So on this, knowledge test from 1912, as an example, it said, hey, on this part, I rate my confidence as a 10. And then it says on the second part there, for the factual recall questions, such as such as definitions and historical facts, assuming accurate transcription from the image and no changes in historical interpretation or information from my last update, my confidence level would be around an 8 or a 9. So you can know right now, if a model isn't even confident in how confident it is, that means you might not want to use that piece. All right. That might means that you need to do some manual checking, right? So we always say, what role should humans play? Well, there you go. Here's a very good way, especially when you're using ChatGPT for business, run confidence checks, right? Here's a super hack. Right? Memory. So the ChatGPT memory feature, cross-chat memory, save things. So tell ChatGPT, create a keyboard shortcut, right? I haven't even talked about this on the show. I like to save good stuff for PPP Pro. All right. Like my secret stuff. All right. Does that sound good? I'll share it. You guys want it or no? Not interested? We'll see. All right, one thumb. I think we're a little delayed. All right, couple thumbs. So one thing, one thing you can do is use ChatGPT's memory feature to only do things that you want to make it faster, right? So think of it as like save it, like almost like saved prompts, but a little more specific than that. So this whole process, right, of like accuracy, right? Kind of this back and forth that I have, you can essentially say, hey, save this. And anytime I hit this keyboard command, as an example, anytime you hit, CC1, so, confidence level 1 or whatever, right? Anytime I hit that, you run this through this exact same thing. So this is a great way where it's almost like a combination of a shortcut plus memory plus just like saving a lot of back and forth with ChatGPT. I think that's a great way to use the new memory feature. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about what we do in business. All right. PPP Pro is all about doing better in business because all of us actually, I'm going to go ahead and put my response here. But what percentage of your time, I just put mine in the chat. What percentage of your time is spent on these things? So either meetings, that's anything involved with a meeting, prep, follow up, etc. Learning, so you're reading something, taking notes on something, writing, so that could be anything, right? Any type of writing, creating policies, etc. Emails, whatever. Analyzing, so spending time analyzing PDFs, analyzing spreadsheets, analyzing charts, right? Or presenting, so you're selling something, you're pitching something, you're training, right? What percentage of your time would you say is spent there? Yeah, Wendy's 100, right? Yeah, a lot of people, 90, 75, 70, 50, right? Yeah, Derek, I agree. What else is left? I'm not sure. So here's the thing. We're going to go over now GPTs that are really good at these things. All right. And again, think business operating software. All right. A business operations system. That is what ChatGPT is. And when we go over these GPTs, hopefully you can see that. All right. So let's talk about GPTs. All right. Everyone's favorite thing. So I'm guessing most of you know. I'm curious. Drop a number. How many GPTs have you all built? I'm curious. And we're going to talk about that later. But first, I just want to go over real quick what GPTs are and some of my favorites, right? Because the Pro class, a lot of it before was geared toward plugins. So we're going over GPTs. So, when they first came out, ChatGPT gave these examples of a chef and a storyteller, etc. Right? So if you don't know much about GPTs, here's how you find them, right? You go to Explore, you go to click My GPTs, and you can start typing. This isn't really a store, right? You can't buy things, you can't sell things, okay? It's just a directory, and it's not a great directory. It's a little better now than it was when it first came out. But what I always recommend doing is typing very slow, right? I know that sounds weird. Sometimes the faster you type, it's not going to bring up good examples. I know that sounds weird, but that's kind of the truth. So also, when you search for something, think of the way that you want to search for it. So maybe you need help with branding, right? You might want to try talking or try typing in marketing as well. Type in branding, brand strategy, type in different things. And essentially, if there's not a category for it, you really just got to search around and find the best ones. Luckily, now they have the number of uses, and then when you click on it, there's also a rating. So if something doesn't have a lot of uses, it means it's probably not that good. FYI. All right. So here are GPT essentials, right? Here's the GPTs, or at least the categories that I think you absolutely need to do better in those 5 categories, right? This is all about saving time, increasing our outputs. Where we spend most of our time as knowledge workers, right? So whether it was 50, 70, 75, 90%, 100% of your time, there's GPTs that can really help. You have to know which ones to use and how to correctly use them. All right. So the internet. I miss browser app, but there's still some great internet connected GPTs. So VoxScript is great. WebReader, WebPilot, There's quite a few more. I think I have a group of 6 or 7 that I kind of flip flop between. All right. Because browse with Bing, like we talked about, is not always entirely accurate. So a lot of times, you're going to want to start with websites, right? I know that sounds weird. Search engines, I think, are a wasteland because SEO people game the system. So let's just say, as an example, let's go back to our, you care about that you work in the transportation industry and you work on rails, right? Like your company is a rail company. Um, let's say you're looking for trends in the rail industry, right? There's a good chance that whatever is ranking up there right now in 2024, it's actually an old article from like 2019, and some sneaky search engine optimization person is just changing things in the back end, changing the title tag, changing the H1s, buying a bunch of backlinks, and it might just be really bad information in there. So, really, when we talk about using ChatGPT for business, you really have to have control over the input. We don't necessarily want to leave it up to a 1.8 trillion parameter large language model, which we know has a lot of garbage in there. That's why I would say 90% of the time, we always start with certain URLs, certain PDFs, certain YouTube videos, or a very targeted browse with Bing call. Right. So you don't necessarily want to start a chat or leave it up to chance. You really want to have control over the quality that goes in, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So these first two essentially are ways that you get more control over what the content is that you want to focus on, or that's going to help make the model a little smarter for your vertical. All right. So YouTube, I love YouTube summary and video insights. Uh, Data analysis, 2 great GPTs, one called Sheet, which obviously allows you to work with Google Sheets, and then Excel GPT, to just kind of work a little bit more and better in spreadsheets. All right. Automation I wish Bardeen was still around. It's not. But for automation, we have the Automation Consultant by Zapier. Also, check out today's episode. I talked about new AI product from Zapier, which is really cool if you haven't checked it out. Then there's also If This Then That for automation. So literally, I think these two are pretty big, especially Zapier, right? Because here's the reality: not every single piece of software that you use on an ongoing basis has a GPT, right? As an example, let's say your company uses HubSpot and your company, as your CRM, and let's say they use MailChimp, as your email service provider, and then, Google Analytics. Let's just say that those are 3 tools that you use routinely. Guess what? None of those you can use natively inside of ChatGPT, right? There's no GPTs for those 3 platforms. Guess what? You can obviously access all of them with Zapier. Okay. So that's just like why I really wanted to call out some of these automation GPTs, because I'm not saying you should do everything inside of ChatGPT. Sometimes it's way better to just obviously log into the respective systems. But sometimes, especially, with Zapier, you can, with one prompt, if you already have, these zaps set up, and you can set them all up with natural language anyways, you can then grab data from all 3 of those things at once inside of ChatGPT once you already kind of get it set up and configured correctly. If it's something that you do routinely and repetitively, which is like y'all, like my days, I do the same processes over and over, right? So it's something that we're always continuing to do as well. I'm excited to use this new Zapier product because there's some things that maybe weren't able to be fully automated before that maybe now will be. So you need to continually be looking at your repetitive processes, looking at the GPTs available, looking at Zapier, because Zapier can, connect you to just about anything. All right, another one here, knowledge. So knowledge at X, Wolfram, Scholar AI. I also like Consensus. So again, we want to start with the highest quality inputs as possible. And we don't want ChatGPT to be processing garbage or giving us garbage. So again, increase the quality of your input, and you're going to increase the quality of your output and reduce the likelihood of hallucinations. Let's see. Sorry, I see some comments here. My favorite is plugins. Oh man, missed the plugins, Peter. Do you need, Jordan, all those 6 in one mother GPT? Hey, if anyone can get all those in one, that would be fantastic. Brian, now that plugins are gone, we would just tell ChatGPT to use the essential we want it to, right? How do we take advantage of multiple programs if we need them now that plugins are gone where we could use 3 at once? Yeah, you can't. You can only use 1 at a time, which stinks, right? So you really can't do a lot of autonomous automation, if that makes sense. So I know that's like not even like a real term, but when I think of like autonomous automation, that's when like all I have to do is click button A, and then button A will click button B, and button B will click button C, and button C will click button D, right? That's autonomous automation. Right now, we had that with plugins. We don't have that anymore with GPTs because we can only work with 1 at a time. However, you can still get a little taste of that if you're using Zapier, because then Zapier can go out if you already have a multi-step Zap set up and configured and working, then it can kind of do that piece for you. But yeah, unfortunately, even though GPTs are great and they're very easy to build and they're very easy to make, they don't have quite as much power as plugins. All right, let's keep it going. So business productivity. Again, this is I think my favorite list of GPTs. Even though I love the internet connected, like you got to be productive at the end of the day. Smart Slides and Doc Maker, amazing, right? I still know people like I talked to an entrepreneur buddy the other day, and he's like, because I know like 6 years ago he would spend all day building PowerPoints, and I'm like, are you still building PowerPoints? He's like, yeah, all day. In there designing, tweaking, changing this. I'm like, why aren't you using like ChatGPT in a GPT plugin? It is literally so easy, right? So I love Smart Slides. I believe that allows you to create PowerPoint slides, or I think it also allows you to do Google Slides as well. Doc Maker, same thing. I think you spend so much time copying and pasting information from ChatGPT and then formatting it in a document. Maybe you need to create a PDF and it has all this weird formatting. You need to tab it over, right? A lot of text, when you copy and paste it out of ChatGPT, it loses formatting. If things are numbered, the numbers are gone, the indents are gone, the bullet points are gone, etc. Right? Or maybe there's information in there, you want to save it to a spreadsheet. So then you're spending all this time. So I love Doc Maker because then you can just say, you could use a internet connected GPT. You say, go to this website, grab all this data. It replies back with all the data. Then you mention the Doc Maker and you say, turn this into, turn the first part into a Word document, turn the second part into a PDF, and then turn the third part into a spreadsheet with these 5 headings, right? As an example. So I love those first 2. Whimsical diagrams and diagrams show me little different. There's some crossover, but they each have their own unique features. So whether you want to make a mind map, whether you want to make a decision tree, a staff tree, there's so many different types of diagrams that you can use. Simple things, bar charts, etc. But also, I love just using diagrams to visually learn things, right? Like a very, as an example, OpenAI, what was it that they released? I forgot the name of it. Essentially, the instructions of how the model worked, right? I saw something on Twitter. Someone just, used diagrams, show me, and they put the article in there. And then, it's just a visual way to learn things. Some people learn things better that way, which I love. And then last but not least, in our GPT essentials for business productivity is MixerBot Chat Drive. To be able to chat with your Google Drive documents, game changer. All right, what else do we got here? All right, so couple things. All right, the more you use GPTs, the harder it is to find. So a lot of people don't know this. When you mention a GPT, it only remembers your GPTs and then the other 8 most recent GPTs that you've used. Well, guess what? I've used hundreds of GPTs. Not all of them are good, and not all of them I would use again. However, if you have one that you use consistently, make sure you have to research for it. You bring up the GPT information, and then you just click the 3 dots there, and then you say keep in sidebar. So then no matter what wherever you are, you can always at mention it. Otherwise, it's only going to do your recent ones and then your GPTs that you've built. All right. If you are in Teams account, there are new settings for GPTs and for data. So keep that in mind. So you just go into your settings, your GPTs, and then there's this third party column, and then the GPTs column. So this is more of sharing. So sharing GPTs across teams, super helpful. Just talked with someone yesterday on how that they're using this within their organization, because certain people they want access to GPTs and they give it to an entire department. Sometimes they're like, oh, we only want senior level people with access to this information. So it's a great thing to know, especially if you're using Teams or Enterprise. Mentions. So I did just talk about that. So you see there, when you type at, you're going to get the most recent. So you'll see all those, the ones with the clock. Like I said, it only brings up the 8 most recent in your GPTs. So make sure you pin the ones that you use frequently. All right. This part's important. And I did just add this to the most recent PPP. So apologies if you heard this before, but you should only use GPTs in dedicated GPT mode once, just so you can use them later. Okay. After that, you should not be using GPTs in their own dedicated GPT mode. So what that means is when you click on a GPT on the left-hand side and it brings you to this like window, right? It has the logo, the GPT, and you start chatting with it there. Don't do that ever. All right. And I'll explain to you why. So how you should do it is always use the default mode. And then if you need to use the GPT, just go ahead and at mention it. And then when you're done using that GPT, or if you want to use a different one, go ahead and click the X. So a lot of people don't understand why. So let's just use this example where, at first we're using the Veed GPT. All right. So let's say we're talking and then it's like, oh, okay, well, if I need the web reader, I can just mention the web reader. Yes, you can. However, guess what? If you're doing that, you're still under the umbrella of the Veed GPT. So what that means is you probably don't know how that thing's built, and it may or may not give you access to the full features and functionality of GPT-4 Turbo. As an example, custom instructions or configuration instructions. So there might be configuration instructions as an example that say, always respond in bullet points. And maybe you want long text and you're like, why can't I get long text out of this? Or maybe as an example, this Veed GPT doesn't have Dolly enabled, or it doesn't have advanced data analysis enabled, because all of those things need to be enabled or disabled, and you don't know. So you don't know what you're getting when you are working inside of a GPT. It's extremely important. Never use a GPT inside of the dedicated mode unless it's yours that you built and everything's enabled, right? If it's a third party, never, ever use it. Only just once, so then you can reference it later. That's important. I'm going to wait until y'all give me one of these thumbs up things to make sure that makes sense. All right. Saving you time, y'all. Just like if you ever get the thing that says you've gone over your limit, click here to use the default mode. Never click that because you can't go back. All right. So let's talk about training ChatGPT on your data. It's the thing that everyone loves. All right. Here's the other thing. Unless someone in your organization tells you that you have permission, never upload confidential, sensitive, proprietary, classified information into ChatGPT or any other large language models. All right. With that out of the way. All right. I always got to give my disclaimer. With that out of the way, let's talk about how you can train ChatGPT on your data, and just let's talk about data in general. Because one thing that people don't know is you can accidentally leak all of your information out and not know it, right? So let's say you build a GPT with your company's data, and you make the mistake of making that link public, and just so you can send it to more people, more of your team, as an example, right? Guess what? If someone else gets a hold of that GPT, you can essentially, this isn't a jailbreak necessarily, but you can get all that insider information. So you need to be careful when you do decide to use ChatGPT to train it on your data. All right. So most of you understand, right? Because I think most of you guys said that you built GPTs, but there's essentially a create and a configure. All right. And then in the configuration instructions, you can upload your own knowledge base, your own documents, right? So think of this as mini RAG, right? So mini retrieval augmented generation, right? So this is just a way that you can put in your own data. So people might say, all right, well, that's the easiest thing. Just upload all my data into a custom GPT. Sure, it's not bad. However, like I said, there are some downsides to that. As an example, it can be easily hacked, right? Instructions can be easily extracted. So if you don't have good security around that GPT, might not be the best thing. Also, the knowledge, the knowledge retention process with how it affects memory, it's not easy to understand and it works differently every time. A lot of people ask me, do I only use GPTs? No, I use normal chats way more because, at least in my experience, it's easier to keep track of tokens in your memory context window within a normal chat. Like I said, uh, the tokenization process when you're using GPTs, especially to retrieve data, it doesn't always make sense. It is very different each and every time. For me personally, I don't like it that way. It might work out well for you. So, mileage may vary. You need to try that out for yourself. All right. So one way that you can train ChatGPT on your data is just bring it all in different ways and keep it in the context window, right? You can upload PDFs, you can URLs with different GPTs, etc. Right? So kind of like how you could do the same for plugins, you could just have one in there for your documents. Another thing to keep in mind: people think that if you're in a normal chat, you can just drop in a 20-page PDF and say, summarize this, and then you can keep talking to it and it's going to know everything. All right. Let's just say you put in a 20-page PDF and you say, summarize this PDF or remember this, right? Let's just say that. And it gives you 20 bullet points. Guess what it actually knows? It knows those 20 bullet points. It doesn't know those 20 pages unless you tell it to go retrieve specific information. So it only is going to remember things that are in that context window unless you explicitly tell it to go fetch, right? Go fetch this information. All right. But again, there's not a lot of documentation out there that talks about how retrieving information from uploaded PDFs in a normal chat versus a knowledge base in a custom GPT. There's not a lot of information on how that affects memory and context. So just keep that in mind. All right, question here, Jeff. Businesses are concerned about data security. Can you touch on data? Making your data anonymous to work with sensitive data within the large language model. Do you recommend any particular anonymizer app to scrub data before using it in ChatGPT? I can't answer. I can't give a blanket answer for that because it also depends on what type of data you have and how it needs to be anonymized, right? So, as an example, is it PII? Is it PHI? Is it information from your CRM? Is it from an EMR, right? Is it healthcare data? So there's no one size fits all answer for that. A lot of people do it manually in different niches and different verticals. So I know that there's specific like GPT type of products out there that do this, but they're by niche, right? So they have one for finance, they have one for medical, they have one for education, whatever. And it might assign random values and might just scrape and scrub or assign, generic default values and then you can compare it to the original content. So yeah, I don't have a lot of specific answers. I just know that I think it's better to find one for your specific niche if there is one, if not to manually do it. And like I said, always be working, if you're the CEO, I guess you can make whatever decisions you want with your data, but otherwise be working with your CTO, your CIO, etc. All right, let's keep going on training ChatGPT on your data. Another way, your websites, right? I'm not affiliated with this company, but pdfmyurl.com, great way to instantly get your entire website in PDF form. So you can use it very quickly inside GPTs or inside of normal chat. All right, let's talk a little bit more about custom GPTs. I'm going to give you guys some secrets. All right. A couple things. As of last week, there's new data controls for these GPTs as well. So you can just go into your settings, your data controls, and then that right there, that's actually toggled on by default. A lot of people don't know. This was new. I think it was released 2 weeks ago. So you need to go into your settings, data controls, improve the model for everyone. It's on by default. Bummer, right? So make sure you toggle that off. You see there, it's on by default. So there's actually multiple places that if you want to turn off data sharing, you have to do it in multiple places. All right. Here's some tips and tricks, y'all. You ready for the good stuff? Right. Here's where we get into, really growing your business with GPTs. So this is what we do, and I think it's a process that works very well because GPTs are not foolproof, right? Like I said, you can create a duplicate. You can literally duplicate one of your GPTs, run the same prompt on each one, and get wildly different answers, right? So it does take a lot of finessing, a lot of back and forth. So another one. There's actually three places. All right. Because also in your custom GPTs, I actually need to move this slide, but that's fine. In the additional settings, this is always checked by default as well. So you got to scroll to the bottom under configure and make sure to uncheck that. All right. To use your conversation data. All right. So here's what we do. All right. So first, and let me know, just type create or configure. So do you build your GPTs using the create? So that is the conversational interface, where the GPT builder, it's just like your chat GPT builds it for you and you just have a conversation, or do you use the configure? So I'm curious what you all use. All right. Brian uses the configure, CD uses the create. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's pros and cons. So here's what I recommend that you do. We found great success with this. All right. So you create one first with the create. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes ChatGPT actually does a pretty good job of converting your natural language into configuration instructions. If you do a very good job explaining it, right? So if you're great at prompting, you should be good at like ChatGPT should be able to do a good job of using the GPT builder to grab that and turn it into configuration instructions. So generally what we do is we start it that way. Then, we, give it a name, add the documents, etc. Then we duplicate it. All right. Then we just go in the second one. So it's literally, we think of it as an A/B test. And then in the second one, in the configure, we just write it by hand, right? We look at what ChatGPT thought, and then we just rewrite it by hand from scratch. All right. Then we use those two side by side, and we see what parts of all of the instructions each one is getting right. So then we generally create a third version. Like as an example, we do a lot of like targeted browse with Bing calls, right? Because unfortunately, you can't go to specific pages with GPTs unless you have a third-party API that you can put in there. That's a little more advanced. It's technically not super hard, but you can't go to specific web pages, with just by using a GPT builder unless you're using a third-party API that allows you to do that, right? So a lot of times we're using what's called targeted browse with Bing calls, so it's like, hey, using these types of websites from, this month of this year, go find this type of article that covers this thing as an example, right? So a lot of times we're piecemealing what's working in option A, which is the create, and what's working in option B, what parts of what steps. And then a lot of times we are using a third version and we're kind of combining the best of both worlds, because in all honesty, sometimes I feel I'm better at certain parts than the GPT builder, and sometimes the GPT builder just gets it right. So this is our way that we literally kind of A/B test and we borrow from what works, and then we usually end up using just that end version. All right. Does that make sense, y'all? I hope that's helpful. That's will save you a lot of time, I think, if you do it that way. All right, let's talk third-party tools. All right. CD, good question. How do you combine them? Well, I just create a third one. So think if there's another one over here, right? You can duplicate either of these, and then you literally just take the pieces that you see work. So, right. So like when you work on this, there's the preview mode. So you give it a task and you see what part, right? Let's say let's say there's 10 instructions, and maybe on the A or on the left side, 1, 3, and 5 are the only ones that really work. So then you grab those, you put that over on number C, and then on B, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, or whatever work well. So then you grab it from there. So you essentially just create a third one, you see what parts are working, what parts aren't, and then you just kind of mix and match and, hopefully create one that's going to work best. All right, third-party tools, y'all. All right, so third-party tools are obviously different than GPTs. Here's the thing, though. They're all based on OpenAI's GPT technology anyways. So you have to keep that in mind. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to give ChatGPT my data, but I'm going to use one of these third parties, right? They're giving ChatGPT your data anyways, right? Or you're working with their API anyways. So keep that in mind. But these tools do make it a little bit easier to work with. So I'd say one of the leaders is Dante. One thing I like about Dante is just last week they came out with an unlimited option, which is great. You pay a little more for it, but if you have as an example, if you have a website that's heavily trafficked, it's probably worth it. So the big thing about these third-party tools, the big difference is, so if you create a GPT, only people with a ChatGPT Plus account can use them, right? We did a consult for a woman a week ago, and she's like, no one can use these, right? She's like, I created these for our clients, but no one has a paid ChatGPT account. So now she's looking at some of these third-party tools because you can put them on your own website. All right. So Dante is a great one. Like I said, they just came out with that new unlimited plan. Bot Sonic from Right Sonic, another great option. So Right Sonic, if you haven't heard from it, was one of the earlier essentially GPT wrappers. So, if you go back, there's Copy AI and Jasper and some of these others. Right Sonic has been around for a while. So they have a good core product. And I think they have a pretty good product in Bot Sonic as well. Chat thing I love. If you use especially Notion, Google Docs, etc., it integrates with those fairly seamlessly. Chatbase, I think Chatbase and Dante are probably two of the top for this kind of third-party GPTs. Another thing about Chatbase, if you use Slack, right? A lot of these other ones don't have Slack integration, but with Chatbase, you can literally be inside of Slack and be quote unquote talking to your GPT. So big benefit there. And then Nibble's like an old school one. I actually did my first, one of my first product reviews was on Nibble like a year ago. So very easy, drag and drop, couple minutes and you're up and running on your website. All right. All right, let's keep this going. So now we are talking about top ChatGPT Chrome extensions. All right. So these are inside of ChatGPT. All right. There's so many great, because I didn't want to do like outside ones because I could spend forever, right? Like I love Voila. There's Merlin, there's Monica, there's so many kind of GPT powered or AI powered tools. So we're only focusing or extensions. So here we're just focusing on ones that extend the capability of ChatGPT again to even make it bigger and badder. Kind of business operating system. Ready? So AIPRM is great. It was very popular early on before there was a ChatGPT Plus because it gave you access to the internet. It was one of only like 3 Chrome extensions that did that. So I think people love AIPRM for the prompt library. And then for, there's a little more control. But also, side note, the founder of AIPRM is a great follow on Twitter. FYI, he's always finding great things out about ChatGPT. Web ChatGPT, another good one. So you might say, okay, well, why would I use this? Well, if you're using Browse with Bing, and maybe you don't have a GPT active and you just want to use something real quick, Web ChatGPT is a great way to connect to a specific website. Or if you are on the free plan for whatever reason, that's a good one to use as well. And then probably one of the most robust pieces, Chrome extensions here is Superpower ChatGPT. It's not for me, but it is by far, I think, the most powerful Chrome extension to expand the capabilities of ChatGPT. One thing I love, you have your prompt management, folders for chats, and being able to color code them is huge. Export all chats. Another thing I love is you can search within the inside of your chats, right? So right now, there's no good way to search all your chats inside of ChatGPT. I don't know, couple thousand chats, and I have to scroll all the way down sometimes, click Command F, and be like, okay, what did I call this thing? So Superpower ChatGPT, you can search within the contents. However, it does make it slow. For me, I don't like it. I like a clean interface. It does make it a little slower, but it does give it a lot of power. All right. Getting toward the end here, and I'll answer any more questions we have. So now talking about sharing trained chats or GPTs. So something new. We talked about this whole, hey, ChatGPT is creating a search engine, right? I haven't even talked about this on the show, and I haven't seen anyone talk about this on the internet. And it's actually not a big deal, but it tells you what they're doing. All right. So in the upper right-hand corner, if you want to share a trained chat with your team or with anyone else, you click the share button, and then it gives you the option to copy a link. Something else, it has this thing that says, make this chat discoverable. Interesting. Yeah, you see what's happening. ChatGPT wants to come for Google and Perplexity. All right. Next, if you ever want to delete something, if you do share a chat with someone, you want to delete it, you just go into your settings, data control, and manage, and then you can delete them right there. Sharing a GPT, a lot of people don't realize this. There's different levels of sharing. If you click anyone with the link, you got to be careful, especially if that GPT, let's just say you share it with a coworker, right? And maybe the coworker doesn't know what data you put in there, and then they share it with a friend, and they're like, "Oh, this is awesome," and then the friend hacks it, and then they're like, "Oh, look at all this data that I found inside," or all this maybe proprietary information that they found inside that you put in them that you didn't know. So you really need to be careful with the controls. So the options are only me, anyone with the link, which literally makes it public, or the GPT store. All right. All right. Very last but not least, a very small tidbit, but I think it's important. We had a great episode today. I don't know if I think a couple of you all were on here, but I really enjoyed today's conversation about data. But one thing with advanced data analysis is people don't understand that ChatGPT is actually really, really good at data analysis. There was people like when ChatGPT first came out, and like sometimes it would like hallucinate on like what 2 + 2 is. So there's this common misconception that ChatGPT is not good at not just like basic, like not just like advanced computation, but not even advanced, like not even basic math. And that's wrong. ChatGPT is actually great at advanced data analysis. Here's a little tip though, and this is different every time. Again, it is generative. All right. So sometimes, in the same way that sometimes ChatGPT with the same prompt will browse with Bing, sometimes it won't. Sometimes, if you just, as an example, upload a spreadsheet and say, analyze this spreadsheet, sometimes it will use the advanced data analysis mode. It is a dedicated mode, right? So it used to be literally its own mode. Now it's just its own mode in the multimodal ChatGPT default. More times than not, you will get much better results if you just say using advanced data analysis mode. All right. So there's just a little baby tip and trick, because, hey, when you want to grow your business, you got to have someone on your team that can really crunch the data and tell you what this all means. All right. And that is it, y'all. That is it. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what questions. I think I see one question here. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, so let's go ahead and see. So Brian says, I'm still a newbie in terms of creating using GPTs versus just starting a new chat. Can you point me to a link episode where you cover this? Absolutely, I can. Brian, let me just give you one right here. Give me 1 second. This is a pretty easy enough question. I can just knock it out here. Not that one, not that one. Not that one. Give me a second. I got it. Bam. Custom GPTs. There we go. Our beginner's guide right there. Bam. Got it. All right. Hey, no other questions? Did we make it? All right. So let me tell you this. We are doing this now with a couple of companies, but training their company. So think of, you had the normal PPP, right? And then you had the PPP Pro. Think of if all of that was about your business, right? We just had an hour-long onboarding call, and then we're going to be talking to this company's multiple people on multiple teams. We're going to be building this exact training and teaching them prompt engineering 101 and kind of 102, but through their lens. Everything bespoke, tailored to them, right? We're actually working on this with a large company that has 800,000 employees, one of the largest companies in the world. We're helping them with prompt engineering. Weird, right? So we are very good at this. We are very good at teaching people who are not right. Like, I don't think we're going to get everyone on your team to be a prompt engineering expert, but we can get those people who don't know what ChatGPT is from a 0 to a 5, which might take months of practice. We can get them there just with this PPP biz. It is a 3-hour session. We are building custom chats, custom GPTs, a bespoke training, and then ongoing support. So multiple ongoing support calls, one-on-one, small team training, whatever you need for up to 50 people. So if that is something that you want for your business, please just let me know. So here's kind of an overview of what we do. So a 3-hour training live. Don't worry, there's a halftime, potty break, up to 50 members, and then 4 30-minute follow-up sessions as well to make sure that your team is getting the most. If you do want access to that, just email me and just say PPP Biz in the subject line. I do have a kind of a discount code that expired on April 30th. But if you still want it, let me know. I'm not going to like mass email it out to people because I just want to do it for people in the PPP Biz. All right. So, or sorry, in the PPP Pro. So I'm not putting that out there for everyone or in the newsletter. I mean, we don't even really talk about this ever, that we do this for companies. I really just offer this to people who have gone through Prime Prompt Polish and PPP Pro. Number one, we don't have the capacity to do it with everyone. But number two, I know if you made it this far that you see the value, and whether you're a small business owner or you work on a large marketing team, whatever, you can probably understand how this could be valuable to teach everyone else, right? So that is it, y'all. I don't see any questions. Let's see. No questions. All right. I hope this was helpful. Was this helpful? Did we learn anything? If nothing else, what I want you to think of is those 5 things, right? Those 5 things. Think of those 5 repetitive tasks that you do every day. Think of those GPTs that I shared. Think of those best practices, how to organize them, how to use them correctly, how to share data, right? How to use multiple GPTs the right way, how to build a GPT, right? Think of all of those repetitive things that you do over and over, and then build a GPT, bring in your data, use other GPTs, use prompt engineering 101, PPP, memory recalls. If you do all of these things and apply them to your business in those 5 categories, I literally guarantee you are going to start winning back time. But you need to continually do it, right? Just talked with my team yesterday and today about this. This is something I'm like, we haven't done this in a while. We need to recommit to this, and we need to, improve our processes as well. So it is an ongoing iterative process. But if you do this, I guarantee you're going to be accomplishing much more in much less time. All right. That is it. Let's Wendy, I would be interested. Is there anyone in the call that is in higher education that I could connect to? Anyone in the call? Wendy, let me know what call you're talking about in the call connected to higher education. This session. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Is anyone in higher education? Wendy wants to know. Also, you guys feel free. I'm sure most of you guys are, connected with me already on LinkedIn. If not, here is my URL. Give me a shout. If I've had people in education, AI education on the show, probably like 4 or 5. So yeah, if you do want to reach out to, me, please do so. If you're looking for an introduction, I can try to make that. So I hope this was helpful. The community is coming, CD. I just talked about this yesterday with the person who's going to be running our community. I know it's been like 6 months in the making. But yeah, appreciate you. It's coming. Hope this was helpful. Tune in tomorrow. We're talking SEO tomorrow. I don't know if anyone cares about SEO. I do. I'm a dork. I got one of my favorite SEO people to come on the show. His name's Steve Toth. He is amazing. He is like one of the old school, godfathers of SEO, so to speak. So if you're a dork like me, even if you don't, he's really good at understanding things. I'm excited for tomorrow's conversation. Hope to see you there. Thanks, y'all. Peace.